A 2000 estimate said there were probably less than 1,000 individuals left. The clutch size is relatively small for an iguana, only 20 to 25 eggs. There's no IUCN assessment because of taxonomic uncertainty. We call it iguana CF iguana because it is very similar to the common iguana, but it is distinguishable morphologically and genetically. But if we apply the red list criteria, it would be critically endangered based on habitat size and population size. And we have the alien invasive iguana, which is the common green iguana, very common in South and Central America. It exists only in the southwest around the Soufre area. It was imported to Soufre for a mini zoo in a hotel from a pet shop in Canada, illegally imported. The clutch size is much larger, so the population growth is faster, 40 to 60 eggs at least, possibly up to 80. The first officially reported hatchlings in the wild were early in 2008. They were spotted late in 2007, but recent interviews suggest that maybe there were iguanas out there in the wild even before 2000. We get, from the people who imported the iguana, we get very conflicting reports. There might have been multiple escapes. We know one pair escaped, but we believe hatchlings escaped also. They deny it. And very recently, we also got credible reports from somebody who said he himself brought in some Vincentian iguanas, which is, again, very different. But that is in the Choiseul area and did not establish. What do we know about dispersal? Dorel did some radio tracking with the forestry department prior to this project. And the St. Lucian iguana can spread 2 to 3 kilometers, especially the females in nesting season. The alien iguana, we did some radio tracking, but basically these circles are projections from when we started the project. And you will see the annual, where it could reach forecast, includes the iconic pitons and Mount Jimmy. So that is really difficult topography to work in. The potential impact of the alien iguana, the main threat really is that the two iguanas could hybridize and thereby eliminate the uniqueness of the St. Lucian iguana if those two currently separate populations should ever meet through natural dispersal or through people carrying it. And the St. Lucian iguana is our flagship species for the entire northeast coast with endemic bird species, a threatened dry forest, tropical dry forest habitat, etc. Of course, the iguanas would compete for food and nesting sites also should they meet. There is so far no damage to crops and drains or the nuisance species, the common iguana is, say, in Puerto Rico on runways. But any illegally imported species, of course, has a risk of carrying pests and diseases. We've been asked repeatedly how different is our iguana. So the French helped us to do genetic analysis. Got samples from Central and South America, and during this project, Sabres and Martins and Bats, Martinique, Guadeloupe, and the French satellite islands. We were unable to get any samples from Montserrat, St. Vincent, or the Grenadines, or Grenada, unfortunately. It is also a CITES-listed species, so it is quite difficult and a lot of paperwork involved. 50 nuclear mitochondrial genes were sequenced and microsatellites analyzed, and basically what we know at this point is that the 10% divergence of the St. Lucian iguana merits at least subspecies status, possibly even a separate species, but definitely subspecies. And a divergence of about 5 mu means that the Amerindians did not bring the St. Lucian iguana to St. Lucia. It has evolved longer in isolation. And the alien in Soufre is of Central American origin. There are large commercial breeding sites in El Salvador and other countries, so we can't go beyond that, but it is a Central American one, different from ours. When we first started talking eradication, Arne was very, very harsh on us, always saying, if you don't know how many you have in Soufre, don't even start the project. We can't find out how many we have in Soufre in that topography. And they're hard to spot. I come to that later. So our colleague in Dorel found a model that actually doesn't depend on the initial population. It is used by conservationists to judge the risk of extinction of a species. And we said we use that extinction risk as an eradication probability and put in different known numbers from the literature and from our own observations. And as Pike said, we put in the best and the worst case scenario, but we also put in a best guesstimate somewhere in the middle. And that was actually the most interesting data to input. And we found the chance of eradication up here, 100%, depends on hunting pressure, which we had as low, medium, and high, on the time lag between the first introduction and the onset of hunting, 4, 9, and 21 years, and on natural juvenile mortality and emigration. The program doesn't distinguish how the juveniles disappear as long as they disappear. It did not depend on whether we take out adults or juveniles with the hunting. And I just selected a few graphs that basically show what it's all about. When we started the project, we thought we were before the 4-year, so had a very good chance to get up high. 5 years have passed, so we're at least here, but if the iguanas were there before 2000, we're probably around here. So in the best case scenario, high juvenile mortality, somewhere in this field, and high hunting pressure, our eradication chances are near 100%, but in the worst case scenario, they don't quite reach 30. We are probably somewhere in between and somewhere in the 50-50 range. The other thing the project predicted is that if we don't do anything, whether it's an eradication attempt or a long-term control, there will be explosive population growth of the alien iguana. So we have to do something, we have to decide what to do. And we were asked by midterm review to evaluate the different detection and capture methods to see how feasible it is to still aim for eradication. Detection is key, no matter whether we aim to eradicate or control. You see how very well camouflaged the iguana is in our lush tropical island. Here it is. So we did a lot of statistics that is in the paper. I will not take you through any boring numbers. I will just point out some things you have to bear in mind to interpret these numbers. The numbers don't lie, but they're easily misinterpreted. During the pilot, we cited 368 different iguana individuals. We had significant differences between the different loops and focus searches we did. Crescent was the highest, and Torai. But in Torai we found nests. And of course, if you find 40 hatchlings at a time, that really biases the distribution. So these numbers have to be interpreted with caution. Also, the human factor has to be taken into account. We found differences between the weather, between where to look, which plants to look. If very sunny, very rainy days are not good to detect iguanas, it might have nothing to do with iguanas. You don't like to look up into the glaring sun or into that pouring rain and lift your head and search these kind of trees. I want you to remember that picture a little bit. Our best iguana spotter, Siko, spotted an iguana with the binoculars here. That was his routine job. That's what he had to do. And our then new recruit, Bibianus, was said, now get your first catch. Show what you can do. And later on, when I talk about capture, this is the tree he climbed. We tried to put our experiences into a little field manual. What do iguanas, what can help us find them? So we had a little guide to their feces, to scratch marks, tail drags, what kind of sites by the river, sandy nesting grounds, etc. are they attracted to? Where do they like basking? What plants do they like? There are a lot of numbers in the actual paper, but two things are important. Where there's one iguana, there's probably another. They're more sociable than you think. And very informative for us. The failure to detect an iguana does not mean no iguana is there. We know as a fact iguana love lendus. That's an Ipomoea Hawaiian species. But maybe they love it so much because they can hide so well in it. Wherever there was lendus, there were significantly fewer iguanas detected. If we found evidence of feeding, we could find the iguana with a higher probability. We know iguanas love lendus, but it reduced our detection capability. We use these data and radio tracking to train our staff. If some people in the team know there is an iguana, you can train the others, try and find it. And even then, the detection was pretty low. And you can use one iguana because you know another one is likely to be close by as a Judas iguana to lead you to that iguana. And that's what we tried also. So we used a combination between visual searches, interviews, and even a bounty system. I discuss why that fell short of expectations in the paper. The bounty itself can work, but initially we targeted the wrong population of informants. So we didn't get as many calls as we had hoped for. Once we got the calls, we actually were quite successful at getting the iguana. But all the different methods we tried were not even worth doing statistics on. Different baits by color, by fruit, artificial nests, etc., had close to zero success, below the level where you can even do meaningful statistics. We had one wonderful season, a chance to work with a detector dog from Washington State. It was shortly after the hurricane and many other challenges that made it a very difficult experiment. But the positive outputs were an expandable terrain. Some of these boulders were moved during the hurricane, and it's very difficult for humans to search a large area. The dog is much better at that. There was consistent change of behavior where we believe iguanas are present in the trees, in the canopy. Unfortunately, we didn't get one as a result of change of behavior, but we know what went wrong and the reasons for that. And a dog can even detect iguana at least 6 feet up in the canopy. And that was one of the questions we were asked. Is a ground animal good at detecting an arboreal species? And we can say, yes, at least it is better than we humans alone. Once you've detected the iguana, you still have a capture challenge. And overall in the project, we caught 60% independent of the method. And then the vets euthanized them. We tried free net. Iguana was about here. Trapping, which was entirely unsuccessful. Even shooting out of the tree, which has a lot of health and safety reasons, and human welfare also. We even failed one tree once, and that failed too. This is the tree I said, remember. Now that you've seen the iguana circled on the previous slide, and that this is really zoomed in, I'm sure you can all clearly see the iguana. This is the tree I said Bibianus had to climb. The tree is not that high. You saw the height on the photo. But there is a 30 or 40 meter precipice, similar to this one, where he's overhanging. He's using his 2 spare hands to hold the loop and to catch the iguana. I hope you've seen it now. It's here. It was his first, and he got it. The loop was actually one of our most effective methods, and hand capture also, but it depends, of course, very much where the iguana is. So again, those data have to be interpreted with caution. There is a method for every place and situation. Again, we tried to put that into field manual in a workshop that was facilitated by Durrell. And also, Matt and I published a peer-reviewed paper together. We exchanged a lot of information with other groups in the US. Our midterm review was very, very helpful. And the French, every year they fly a couple of team members over to Martinique to work on Iguana delicatissima, the endemic species in Martinique. This is Chancel Island, one of the offshore islands where they do the work. And I've been asked repeatedly, why don't we catch 100 iguanas in a week like they do on Chancel? Bob always asked me that question. This is just hilly country. Not much vegetation. The iguanas are there at 120 individuals per hectare. And they hide in plain sight. You can just go up to them, lift them up on their tail, put them in a sack. Ours would shed their tail. Ours are high up in the canopy, well camouflaged. And we cannot fly 30 French students into our terrain and just let them loose on French government funding to catch iguanas. So these are the main differences. If we wait until we have 100 per hectare, we are not going to make an indent into the population. Apart from the dog, what did work was informants. We didn't get as many calls as we had hoped for, and we have analyzed the reasons why. But when we got a prompt call from a resident, we had 100% capture success. So that is something we want to home in. And we built up an iguana alert network of 30 individuals. 21 of them are on the margin of the known distribution, because we want to know if the iguanas get out of that central Soufra area. And they have agreed to be regularly contacted. We had a campaign across the entire country, and we got calls from anywhere. I mentioned the native iguana, for which I get calls regularly. the hatchling that was smuggled into a marina. It was a dive operator who called us on that one. And fishermen caught one iguana at sea and alerted the Suffolk Marine Management Authority. They actually caught in their fishing nets. And it turned out to be one of our radio-tracked iguanas, so it was a great opportunity to bring out a press release and talk about why we are doing the radio tracking and what is it all about. So the people are prepared to collaborate with us, and I would say really it is something we can do without much cost in the department, so we should use it while the impetus is there and phone these people at least once a month if anything is changing. And Kristin, a slide for you on sustainability. After the project ended with Doral, we completed a St. Lucia Species Action Plan. Well, it's an advanced draft. What should we do if the two populations meet? How to conserve the St. Lucian iguana? We also want to continue the Ayanola Pride campaign, preserve the St. Lucian iguana identity with the alien present, and roll it out with all social marketing issues around the flora, fauna, the marine turtles, the birds, etc. And that is exactly the goal of the Ayanola project that we're developing, so we have that in mind. And seek funding, maybe under GEF6 or with other donors also, to do in-depth study with the detector dog, because it was the only thing that looked promising. Harris hawks were also suggested, but either of these very experimental, risky methods have a starting cost of $25,000 just to lease the animals plus the local cost. So with that, I want to thank the many collaborators we had. Thank you very much.